The wiring harness connects the ignition coil to the switch. It is made up of two wires. One carries power from the coil to the switch, and the other has a switch contact on one side and attaches to the engine ground on the other. A piece of heat shielding protects the wires from damage caused by the extremely hot engine. The wires can be damaged, causing a loss of continuity in the kill circuit, or causing an undesirable grounding issue which will shut off the saw. Often a faulty wire can be diagnosed visually. Look for a broken wire, melted insulation, or loose connections. If you don't see anything that looks out of the ordinary, you could use a multimeter and test for continuity to find the offending wire or connection. Replacing the wiring harness is a repair that you can do yourself, and I'm going to show you how.
Hi, I'm Mark Socha.
Do-it-yourself repairs like these are easier than you might think. From lawn machines to cordless drills, kitchen mixers,
Outdoor grills.
our how-to videos walk you through each repair from start to finish. So doing it yourself means never having to do it alone.
Let's get started.
I'll begin by removing the top cover. Next, I'll remove the starter assembly. Now I'll remove the ignition wire from the spark plug and one of the kill wires from the ignition coil. There's a metal clip that secures the ignition wires to the side of the saw, and I'll go ahead and remove that. Because the wires in the wiring harness are underneath the spark plug wire, it'll be nearly impossible to remove these without first removing the ignition coil. So we'll go ahead and do that now. I'll slide the ignition wire forward to get access to the front screw. You'll also notice that the grounding wire is attached with that screw as well. Now I'll remove the air filter cover. This gives me better access to the switch and the wires. Now I can remove the wiring harness connections from the ignition switch. Start with this tab. Just pull it away from its contact. And then on this side, the end of the wire is actually one of the contacts. So I just need to slide it out of the red switch, like that. Now I can pull the harness away from the saw. Now I can install the new wiring harness. And I'll do this pretty much in reverse order. I'll start with the contact that goes into the red part of the switch. If you try to insert that back into the switch, you'll notice that it won't go in easily. And that's because the other piece of the kill switch is actually sitting behind the hole right now. And the two are hitting each other. So to solve this, all I have to do is turn the switch to the on position, and now the contact will slide right into place. You'll notice there's a little tab here for the wire to sit in. Now I'll secure the second wire to the spring tab on the switch. Next, I'll reinstall the ignition coil. As I install the ignition coil, I need to take the wires from the wiring harness and put them up in this little recess near the brake handle. Then as I install the ignition coil, I'll bring the wire around and put them on top of the wires on the wiring harness. And that'll keep all the wires out of the way so they don't get pinched by the various parts of the saw. Now I'll secure the ignition coil to the saw, but there needs to be a specific gap between the magnets on the flywheel and the feet on the coil. In this case, it needs to be 14 thousandths of an inch. I have a special gauge that's made just for doing this, but you could also use a business card or two, as long as the gap is about 14 thousandths or 0.35 of a millimeter. So I'll insert the gap down in front of the feet on the ignition coil, and then I'll rotate the magnets on the flywheel around until they line up with the feet on the ignition coil. Now the gap's correct, and I can secure the coil. First, I'll put in this front screw on the ignition coil, and that's the one that also secures the ground wire. I'll put the screw through the eyelet on the ground wire and then into the saw. As I tighten the screws, I'll just be mindful of that gap on the coil, make sure it's correct. And now I'll secure the last wire from the wiring harness to the tab on the ignition coil. And I can remove the spacer between the ignition coil and the flywheel. Now I'll pull the wires from the wiring harness towards the rear of the saw so any excess wire is at the back. Same thing with the spark plug wire. I want to line up this piece of heat shielding so that it's in front of the cylinder. Then I'll place the ignition wire, or the spark plug wire, in front of that, and secure the wire bundle with the metal clip that we removed earlier. Now I'll reinstall the starter assembly. And I'll place the spark plug boot back onto the spark plug. Now install the air filter cover. I want to make sure that it seals all the way around the air filter base. Yeah, just like that. And now I can replace the saw's top cover. Be sure to check back often for new videos and expert advice. If you found this video helpful, give us a thumbs up
And leave a comment.